Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, President of Universal Accounting Center, and this is a show dedicated to individuals who are owners and operators of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. It's here we focus on those things that you need to be doing to work on your business and to, in fact, have what I refer to as the premier accounting firm in your area. Each and every week, we have on the show experts to address things that we need to be working on as a business to ensure that we're actually doing what is effective for our companies to, in fact, get paid what we're worth. So today's going to be a wonderful episode. We happen to have on the show Matthew Pollard. Matthew happens to be known as the Rapid Growth Guy. Matthew is responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar businesses, and he has a number of success stories associated with those, all before the age of 30, by the way. His humbly beginnings, the advertising and adversity that the adversities rather that he has faced, as he's had his epic rise to a successful show that anyone with the right motivation and the right strategies can achieve anything they set their mind to. Now, he actually happens to be someone that Forbes calls the real deal. Global Gurus lists him as the top 30 sales professional. Selling Power Magazine just named him the 2023 Sales Kickoff Speaker of the Year. Sales World Magazine lists him as the top 50 speakers, and Big Speak highlights him as the international top 10 sales trainer. He's also the founder of Introvert and is the best-selling author of Introvert's Edge book series, which has sold over 100,000 copies and has been translated into 15 different languages. So Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, man. I'm ecstatic to be here.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So first of all, I'd like to point out that I had the privilege of seeing you on stage, and I thought what you shared there was amazing. I think what you're doing here is incredible because I believe a lot of people can relate to your message. And so this is something that we're going to jump into. So here's where I would like to kind of start. There's something to be said for an author. They write a book. They obviously find that they have something they want to get out there into the world. But I'd like to back up a little bit and just try and get a little bit of a story as to what was it that was causing you to experience the things that you were gathering to realize I have something I need to write down and put into a book?
Oh gosh, that's a really deep question. So, I mean, there are two things. So I guess when I moved to America, I mean, you said in my bio, I've been responsible for 5 multi-million-dollar success stories. And so when I came to the United States, I made the decision that I wanted to teach people like myself, other introverted service-based business owners, how to grow. And I talked about differentiation and niche marketing because I feel like, especially if you're talking in your industry, accounting, bookkeeping specifically, everybody just introduces themselves by their functional skill. And when they're at a networking event, people, I mean, they hear I'm an accountant. They're like, oh, I have an accountant. What do you say to that? And, if they say, oh, I'm looking for an accountant, the next thing you hear is, how much do you cost? Are you straight into a price conversation? Neither of those things are positive. So I started teaching people how to articulate their value in a way that people were actually excited and motivated to want to hear more. But what was interesting is when I got to the part of before I started teaching people how sales could be a process, I talked about my own introverted story. And I had so many people come up to me afterwards and say, oh my gosh, Matt, I just had no idea as an introvert that I could sell. And it always, and we can talk about this, I actually learned to sell watching YouTube videos, and, I fell into sales. I should be the last person telling people how to do it. But what happened was I actually worked with a writer that was a client of mine. He was a ghostwriter, and he struggled to charge even $20,000 for a ghostwritten book. And we built out his unified message, which we called him the authority architect. We niched him down to complex topic matter experts. And then we changed his sales process because he was trying to sell via email, which was terrible. And next thing you knew, I mean, he was charging $40,000 for a ghostwritten book, and he made, like, within 4 months, this is a guy that made $27,000 in 2013 and $12,000 by October when he reached out. He made $120,000 by the end of the year. The following year, he made just shy of $300,000. And he now charges $130,000 for a ghostwritten book. And he's booked out, at the time of this recording, about 8 months. And so for me, of course, it was a great case study, but he was like, Matt, you've got to put these principles into a book. And I didn't want to. For me, I had a reading speed of a 6th grader in late high school, and I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be so hard. But I decided that it had to be done. And lo and behold, the book's now sold over 100,000 copies. It's in 16 languages. It's helped so many people. And more specifically, it's helped people that really feel why they may have a complex topic matter, really understand that they're not second-class citizens. Their path to success is just different, and they can
Mhm.
lean into their natural strengths rather than trying to become that extroverted person and really still be able to create a rapid growth business that revolves around them, their family, and their life. And I think what's really important specifically just because I see so many accountants, so many bookkeepers, they're hurting because they can't express their value. They don't feel comfortable with sales at all just because they think they have to do it the way the used car salespeople do it. And then on top of that, they don't know how to articulate their value in a way that stimulates purchasing behavior. So they end up getting paid far less than what they're worth. With an industry that is constantly shrinking, where prices should be going up, they still don't feel comfortable putting up their prices. So they end up working like 100 hours a week while they're getting paid almost nothing, and their customers don't treat them like gold, which they absolutely should. And they don't get, their opinions aren't valued. And I just see so many people in that complex topic matter expertise, those sorts of fields, of which your industries that you work with definitely are, constantly be devalued just because the way that they start that initial conversation totally misses the mark.
Well, I appreciate you bringing all this up because what you're sharing here is what resonates with the accounting professionals. So many of them do feel undervalued by their clients. So many of them are working the many hours that you're describing. They struggle to describe themselves when it comes to a sales conversation of how to position themselves and how to price their services. So everything that you're mentioning resonates. So one of the things that I'd like to do is back up a little bit, and then we're going to dive into these things. But you're clearly addressing introverts. So I want to define what an introvert is. The second thing I want to point out just real quickly as a tangent is your point of the book, going through your experience of being told you need to write a book about this. I can resonate with that. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because I think many people have within them a book to be shared. It's something that can be written. And if they find that there is a calling to write a book, I believe that that's something that can be incubated. And your idea of mentioning the ghostwriter is a valuable essence to that. So we could definitely go down that route. So let's go to the introvert. Let's start there. And then I think we're going to kind of dive into a few of these elements that you were sharing a moment ago. So let's define the introvert, because I think some people have differing opinions as to what that really is.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right there. And firstly, everyone's made it way too complicated. And I mean, it might be all the research dollars and grant dollars that go into making it more complicated, but the truth is, introversion is just where you draw your energy from. And if you draw your energy from being with people, you're an extrovert. If you draw your energy from being by yourself, then you're an introvert. And the thing that I will say, and it kills me to hear this all the time, people are like, oh, I'm a recovering introvert, or I was an introvert, but don't worry, I'm an extrovert now. Like, firstly, you can't change who you are. And secondly, there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. As a matter of fact, I mean, there's a reason I called the introvert's edge, not the introvert's survival guide to sales. I believe that introverts actually have the edge when it comes to all of these so-called extroverted arenas. Because an introvert with a system and a process, we plan, we prepare, we're empathetic, we have active listening skills. We can run circles around an extrovert. And truthfully, this isn't, and I want to be clear, it's not extroverted bashing here, because the truth is an extrovert can also do really, really well through systems and process, but they like to wing things. So they start with the process and then they move away from it, right? An introvert will hold onto it for dear life. So if you're one of those people that draws your energy from being by yourself, don't be ashamed of it. Don't be embarrassed by it. The truth is, it just means that you're an introvert, and you need to learn a method that leverages those natural strengths. Now, you might say, well, hang on, when I go networking now, I don't feel like it, I don't get as anxious anymore. Well, that's great. But the truth is that for me, when I first started networking, I was a lot more anxious. I was a lot more stressed. I'd ruminate the night, that night about what I did right and what I did wrong, like all introverts do without a plan. But the thing is that now that I'm good at it, it would be easy for me to say I'm extroverted because I enjoy it. It takes far less energy from me, and I don't ruminate the night after, that night. But I am still drained by it, just far less. That makes me an introvert.
The idea that we can now, as introverts, actually use a process, a system, a strategy to more intentionally go into these conversations is so appealing, simply because I think a lot of people, whether they're introverts or extroverts, they need to understand that there is an art and a science to this idea of selling. The art of it is the game. It makes it fun. It makes it exciting. It's interesting. It's creative. The science of it is the predictability, the process, the system of following something that is reliable. And if we can enjoy the process and leverage a system, it actually is less taxing, as you're explaining, less taxing on us both physically and emotionally and mentally. It's not that draining exercise that we leave exhausted from. It's something that we can get engaged in and enjoy. So I'm really enjoying this conversation. So let's talk about then, now that we are clear as to what that introvert's edge may kind of draw from or who it's applying to, we're going to just, as a side thing, let the extroverts know they're okay. They've got a process. They have a system they can use that's effective. But leaning into the introverts, let's talk about the positioning. You spoke at the very beginning about how sometimes we lead with, I'm an accountant, our skill, and that just kind of self-sabotages. Oh, yes, I have one. I'm working with one. Or the person that we're speaking to just naturally believes they understand exactly what we do and are ready to move on with that misunderstanding. So how do we position ourselves other than saying we're an accountant?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you asking in this order because a lot of people, I've worked with people, and we can talk about this later, that have been able to put up their prices by like 400 to 500% and retain 82% of their clients. And they're like, well, hang on a second, how could you possibly do that? Well, the answer is learning how to articulate your value more effectively. And you can do the same with new clients, and people feel like that's unapproachable and unobtainable because they're so used to these functional conversations. So if you start with sales, you've kind of already lost. If you go and tell your clients a price rise, but you don't talk about the value, you've already lost. And even in an industry where realistically, these days, it's kind of underserved, right? The number of accountants and bookkeepers coming into the industry and not what the world needs, especially as the government makes it so much more complicated and there's so much more regulation. The fact is, you may not think, you're as rare as diamonds these days, especially good accountants and bookkeepers.
Yes.
So the thing that I will tell you is, firstly, let me just quickly demystify sales, because as I said, used car salespeople have ruined it. But sales originally was derived from the term, or the Scandinavian term, to serve. And the best way to serve your clients is to get them out of their own way and take them to a positive place. So if you don't feel like you offer a great service, then stop listening to the podcast. I don't want to help you. But if you do, then you owe it to your customers to get them out of their own way, because that's the best way to serve your clients. And that is not hitting them with a fire hose of information, a bunch of jargon, or your functional skill, because that's not going to engage them. What you have to do is sidestep the battle altogether. And I'm going to use an example outside the industry, though I've worked with many accountants and bookkeepers, specifically because I don't want you trying to apply exactly this example to your business. Everyone is unique, and you need to lean into your uniqueness. So the best example I can give you is actually this. I worked with a language coach out of California, and she taught kids and adults Mandarin. For the longest time, she did Mandarin education for $50 to $80 an hour. But there were all these people moving into California willing to charge $30 to $40 an hour for private consultation. So she had to compete with that. She had to compete with the fact there were people in China offering to do it for $12 an hour on Craigslist, thanks to this global economy we live in today. And by the way, especially if you're in bookkeeping, you're dealing with the same thing out of the Philippines and out of India, right? And worse than that, she had to deal with the fact is now technology. I'll teach you Mandarin, you teach me English. We just won't charge anyone anything. Sure, that's the same, right? It absolutely isn't. Just like all these digital products to do bookkeeping and accounting aren't the same. But the client's not educated on that, and they stay seeing all of it as the exact same thing. So Wendy came to me and she's like, how do I compete in this crowded marketplace? And I said, well, while I can help you with that, it's always going to make it harder than you need to. Like, there's a lot of heavy lifting that has to happen in the sales process if we don't first avoid the battle altogether. So what I did is I looked at all the clients she'd worked with over the years. And look, she'd worked with hundreds, but there were two people specifically that she'd worked with where she really helped them with a ton more. These were executives being relocated across to China. And look, while she helped them with Mandarin education, what she really helped them understand was the difference between e-commerce in China and the Western world, the importance of respect, like learning the language isn't enough. You have to reduce your accent, how to handle a business card and why it matters so much in China. And more importantly, how rapport works in China. Like in the Western world, think about it. If you're trying to sell something to someone and you're really bad at sales, you might say something horrible at the end, like, do you want to move forward? And if they say they want to think about it, if you go back next week and they still say they want to think about it, we know the chance of getting that sale is minimal. Yet in China, they're going to want to see you 5 or 6 times before they even discuss business. They're probably going to want to see you drunk over karaoke once or twice. It's just the character of the person you're talking to, because they're talking about 10, 15, 20-year deals, not transactional agreements like we do in the Western world. And I was like, Wendy, I was blown away by this. Like, I was like, you do so much more for these people than just language tuition. What are you doing? And she's like, well, there's just a few things. I'm just trying to help. She was so ingrained in her functional skill. And what I want everyone to know, and especially it's so funny when I work with accountants and bookkeepers, right? They're so ingrained into, well, all I do is help people understand their cash flow. All I really do is help people understand their profit. That is never true. Your clients have mindset issues. They're always struggling to integrate things. They never understand why there's no money in the bank. They are trying to handle stock. You help them with a ton more. For a lot of the people listening right now, you are the only line of defense between the 95% of small businesses that fail in the first 5 years and all of the ones that fail after that. But they don't listen to you, and you also don't charge enough, which means you've got no time to really think about how to help them. So we have to fix that. So I said to Wendy, you're doing so much more to help these people than just language tuition. What are you doing? And she was stuck in her functional skills. So I said, look, is it fair to assume as a result of the assistance you're giving these people, they're going to be more successful in China? And she's like, that's the point, right? I said, well, great. Well, then let's call you the China Success Coach. Forget about Mandarin education for a second. Let's create a 5-week intensive that works with the executive, the spouse, and any children being relocated across to China. Now, she loved the idea, but she's like, well, who do I sell it to? What she's actually asking is, who do I go networking to meet? And I said, well, who do you think? And she's like, obviously, it's the executive. And I said, well, that makes sense. I mean, I moved from Australia to the United States, and I was terrified. Imagine going to China where they speak a different language. But I don't think it's your ideal client. And she's like, well, obviously, the company would pay. And I said, well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, they got millions of dollars riding on the executive being successful frequently. Still don't think it's the right person. Now she's like frustrated. She's like, well, who then? And I said, well, I think it's the immigration attorney. And she looked at me now like I'm speaking a different language. And I'm like, think about it. These people make $5,000 to $7,000 revenue, not profit. We all know the difference here. I said, they'd be lucky to make that $3,000 because they've got to pay all the bureaucracy and paperwork to deal, all the stuff they've got to deal with to get the visa. They've got to get the customer, which often isn't cheap. They've got to pay for office space, staff. Just offer them $3,000 for a simple introduction to the China Success Coach. They love the idea. Like, double my money for a simple introduction? What have I got to say? So all you've got to do is say, congratulations, you've now got your visa. Now, I just want to double check you're as ready as possible to be relocated across to China. Now, the executive, often overconfident, would say, yeah, I think we're good. We've got our place sorted. We're learning the language. Kids are getting pretty good at it too. We've got our visa now. Thank you. I think we're set. And they would just respond with this. There's a lot more to it than that. I think you need to speak to the China Success Coach. When you would then get on the phone with the easiest sale in the world, these people were terrified to go. The organization was motivated to pay. She charged $30,000 for this. Minus a $3,000 commission, she made $27,000 for the easiest sale in the world. All by saying, what are the things I do outside the scope of my functional skill? And then what is the high level benefit of that? For Wendy, it was e-commerce, respect, rapport. The high level benefit, China success. For me, I'm a branding consultant. I'm a social media strategist. I help introverts sell and network. I'm too many things and nobody cares. They don't care how hard it was for me to learn these things, how long it took me. And by the way, they don't for you either. But when I say I'm the rapid growth guy and I specialize with helping introverted service providers obtain rapid growth, the simplicity of that message gets me heard in a crowded marketplace. It's a unified message and a niche. That is what I just showed you. And I've seen accountants and bookkeepers do this all over, where they're helping customers get back to momentum and that's their focus, or they're helping just e-commerce businesses, or they're helping people that are going through transitions like succession from father to son, or they don't have a son and therefore they're trying to sell their business. There's so many market niches that you can go into, and so many people are all qualified for different things because your experiences all allow you to serve a different group and truthfully care about different groups, which is far more important.
What you're describing here, I think for the accounting professional, is an emphasis less on skills, what it is we do, is to more what the client gets. How is it that we're benefiting our clients? And ultimately, at the end of the day, we need to be a better messenger so that we can articulate what it is that we're really bringing as value to our clients. Because at the end of the day, they're not paying that we just do the bookkeeping, do the accounting. That's peace of mind, perhaps. But what we're trying to do is really ensure that they have the money in the bank. We're not just doing the cash flow statement. We're ensuring that they have the money to run the business. Now, that peace of mind that they're looking for clearly is something that allows them to run their business confidently, knowing that the business model works and they're going to be profitable. But it's ensuring that they actually have the numbers, the information, so that they can intelligently run the business. There's a lot that we can be doing better as accounting professionals to articulate the value we have for the business community. And I love how you're starting to tap into those. So one of the things that I want to do is address then, what can sales leaders do to actually leverage this introverted talent? I mean, what are some of those things that are, kind of referred to them earlier, that are innate that we can actually leverage to our advantage? So as introverts, when we're having conversations, we can be more deliberate and intentional in kind of guiding the conversation correctly. What would you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are a couple of things on that. Now, I actually want to come back to your previous statement, because a lot of accountants listening to this will probably say, yeah, but of course I would love to do more, but my clients won't pay me for that. Well,
Hmm.
you have to learn to put your prices up. And I hope before we get to the end of this, I'll give you a breakdown on how to go about putting your prices up for your current clients, because they want more advice from you. The truth is that most people that I've worked with say, my clients, they won't pay me any extra. And I'm like, well, what are you actually doing for them? And it turns out they're a cost center for their business, the client. What I mean by that is that all they're doing is reporting to the government. And they're like, but that's all my client pays me for. And I'm like, well, if you don't educate them on how you can become a profit center for them to make more educated decisions, well, you're letting them down and you're letting yourself down, because the truth is that the numbers that you give them allow them to run their business. Now, a lot of times, if they aren't paying you enough, you don't even have time to put together the numbers or even know what numbers are important to them, because you don't know, you're not having those dialogues. You need to build in pricing that allows you to have multiple meetings with the client in a year to understand what's important to them, and then give them the metrics that they need to run their business, and sometimes even tell them that they're lying to themselves about the things that they're doing, and they need to make smarter decisions towards a specific aim. Now, if you're not charging enough to do that, I understand why you're not doing that. The truth is, some people are scared of doing that. They're worried if their customers are going to listen to them. You have to do this, and you have to get your customers to listen. And you have to articulate the value so that you get paid well for it, or you won't do it. It's a vicious chicken and the egg problem, but you need to break through it. Now, the best way to break through it, of course, is sales. And the answer is, like, you've got to understand that you have to leverage your natural skills of listening. And the biggest thing that I will tell introverts is they have to also leverage their skill of planning and preparation. The fact of the matter is, in today's world, actually, the industry's really changed. Like, firstly, I have found that in the past, you had to use rapport in a sales conversation. Like, you had to, right? You'd sit down and they'd be in your office and you had to have all this dialogue. These days people want to meet you on Zoom, and instead of having an hour and a half that they've allocated to speak to you, they've got 30 minutes, and they want to get to the point. And by the way, what you think they want to get to is right to price, because you try to do this social chit chat dance at the very beginning. And when you do that, they're like, okay, so I want to get to work. They've taken control of the meeting, and the next thing they want to ask about is the pricing. That's your fault, right? I can listen to a sales conversation. I can listen to the first 6 minutes of any sales conversation and be pretty rock solid on telling you whether that deal's going to close or not. Today, and yes, I mean, my book gives you a full breakdown of method, and storytelling is by far the most substantial piece of that. I don't mean spewing jargon at people. I mean telling them a story that will actually help them see you as the only logical choice, because story is really powerful. But I leverage the story as the heart of a sale. What I always recommend is, when you start a sales conversation, now, don't get into small talk. And a lot of people confuse what I say. They're like, oh, once I do the small talk, I get to this. No. The first thing you should say when you get on a phone call is really about getting straight to business. Because people, if you want to get paid more, you need to help people understand that you come prepared and you're ready to get to work. Otherwise, if I'm going to pay you to be relaxed and chilled and do general chit chat, then that unfortunately means I'm going to have to pay you less. So think about the way most salespeople approach sales. They get on a call and they're like, oh, tell me a little bit about your business. My answer to that is always, oh, I'd love to. After checking out my website, what questions do you have? And you watch the salesperson fall apart because they haven't looked at my website. Now, most introverts specifically, they have checked out the website, but they don't say that they have. And because of that, the halo effect is, I assume you haven't, and I baby you like every other salesperson. And because of that, I don't like you from the very beginning. Now, the other type of person will ask me a whole bunch of peppering questions, which drives me nuts, or they'll show me a sales deck, which accountants don't do, thankfully. What I suggest when you get on the call, what you should do is this, especially if you know your niche. This is really, really powerful. But what I suggest is get on the call and say, Roger, I'm so glad we can get on a call together today. Roger will respond with, yes, me too. And I say, well, look, while I've had a chance to look at the brief notes you left me on the reservation or the booking or our email exchange, I've looked at your LinkedIn profile. Of course, I've checked out your website. Because a lot of that is static, what I would like to do is take a quick step back, hear a little bit more about you, what you're struggling with, and how I can be the most help to you in the time we have together today. Special emphasis on the word you. What I find is that just diffuses the entire conversation. You almost get this, oh, thank goodness. And then they start, like I've even had people like breathe out in relief because don't forget, a lot of people reaching out to you are introverted too, and they think they're going to get this hardcore sales pitch. So what I've just done is I've diffused the whole conversation and said, look, I'm coming to this call because I understand you're busy and you want me to be efficient. I've done my homework. I've done everything that I can to prepare for this conversation, but I want to make sure I've got everything right. So tell me what I don't know. So first thing is, instead of getting the 10-minute monologue of why they started their business, where they're at now, how they started with their father-in-law, but they don't get like their father-in-law anymore, you get exactly what you need to know to help them because they're telling you just what you need to know that you can't find online. And then your entire job is just to ask them one question that shows them that what they're currently saying is a symptom of a deeper issue. Like, for instance, I will say to people often, oh, look, I totally understand that you think that, the problem is that customers aren't paying you enough. Just so I understand, when you're in a networking room and somebody says, maybe, to be interested before you're interesting, and somebody says, what is it that you do? What is it you say? The number one response I get is, oh, that's where I get stuck. I'm like, how can you get, that's like foundational. But you also get people say, oh, I say I'm an accountant, I work with small business owners because I read somewhere that I need to niche down. Small business is not a niche. That's an entire marketplace. Mm-hmm. Then what I do is I then will say, okay, so where I'm concerned with that is you're introducing yourself by your functional skill. And then I will tell the story of Wendy to help them understand what they're doing wrong. And at the end of that, all I do is say, does that make sense? And they say yes. And I say, great, at this stage, I can direct you in your case, I can direct you to some great free content to help you continue down this journey yourself. Or I can talk to you about what working with me looks like potentially if you don't want to work with them. Now, I always suggest that that's the best framework. Leading with free means that they say, no, Matthew, I'd actually like you to sell to me now. You get permission. But the story is everything. It's the crux because most people, if they tell stories at all, and by the way, I don't mean I worked with this customer, we got this result. That's not storytelling. That's giving them the eyewitness account. It's like no one wants to spend any time watching documentaries or CNN. But they'll sit down for a movie for 3 hours because of the emotional driving content. A story is more like the story of how you met your husband and wife. Like I know the story of how I met my wife. Like the first time I told it, my wife and I, there were some bulky elements we may have removed now, right? There were some parts that people really liked. So, we may embellish on it a little bit now. I mean, the story of how I met my wife, when my wife and I tell it together, it is, no kidding, a theatrical masterpiece. And I've got no doubt that everybody listening probably has a similar story about how they met their spouse. But the thing is, when we tell business stories, all the emotional elements aren't there. It's so matter of fact. Customer wanted this, so we gave it to them. The sad thing in accounting is usually we don't even tell stories. We hit them with jargon, and then we give them a testimonial at best. And that just feels like a sales pitch, and that's why it's uncomfortable. So the reason why I'm telling you to tell stories well, think about the story I told you of Wendy and the whole transitions. It was like a 3 or 4 minute story, but it's because it takes you through this emotional roller coaster that you resonate with. And you need to do the same for your customers. And if you don't have a niche, the story's not relevant enough. But if you do, it's perfect. By the way, same advice for writing a book, and we can talk about that later. But when you tell a story well, first thing is people remember up to 22 times more information embedded into a story. So they'll actually walk out feeling like they understood what you heard. Yes. And the second thing is people, when you tell a story, it activates the reticular activating system of a person's brain, which creates artificial rapport. Yes. The reason why this is powerful is because, notice I didn't start with rapport. You need to develop it, and we introverts, we're terrible at it. So when you tell a story, it creates that artificial rapport that you would normally have done at the beginning, and they feel like they've got this uncanny connection with you that they can't understand.
It's relatable.
Exactly. And then the last thing, and this is really key, is it short circuits the logical part of the brain. That's the part of the brain that says that won't work for me. I'm not sure about that. Send me a proposal. When you tell a story, the emotional part of the brain literally short circuits the logical part of the brain, and the emotional part goes story time, and it just listens. It assumes all the detail in the story is factual, and it listens for the moral. And if the moral is we work with someone just like you, and we got them to an amazing outcome, they will hear that and they're like, you know what? I want what Wendy has, or I want what John has. And that's what you need for your stories as well. So I would suggest most businesses are one story away from the rapid growth business that they deserve. Think about your niche. Think about the one core problem that they have. And I'm talking write it out, remember it, practice it, because otherwise it's going to sound robotic and rehearsed. But you remember, like the tally marketer that calls you at 7 o'clock at night is reading from a script. It sounds horrible. Think about your favorite movie, the favorite character, and how authentic they are. So are they. The only difference is practice.
Yep. One of the things that I'm appreciating here, and by the way, we've skipped so many things, we've jumped around. There's a lot that I think we've covered, but one of the things that I want to really emphasize is your point as it relates to stories. I think there's a story that we have as accounting professionals working with our clients that's more than just the services we're providing. It's more than just what we do as tasks or performance. It literally is this narrative of how we're relating with our clients, helping them with their businesses, and most importantly, I hope, changing their lives. And one of the things that I think you're doing is illustrating the value of those stories when told right. Because I think one, for the storyteller, it allows them to get engaged, emotional. It allows them to become relatable. And one of the things that you're trying to do here is not follow a script. You're trying to share a story that they can relate to emotionally. For the listener, it's interesting, it's entertaining, it's something that's curious. And so what we're trying to do is draw them in through those various elements. And at the end of the day, they want to be involved with you simply because of the fact that you're now someone that they can relate to and identify with. And those emotions that they felt as they were hearing you tell the story, they would like them to continue as they interact with you, and they're willing to pay for that. And so that's some of the things that I think I'm hearing from your explanation of how you should properly be selling as an introvert. So now, one of the things that I want to do, because time has been fleeting from us right here, is basically ask for a summary. We talked about at the very beginning the idea that we're introducing ourselves as accountants incorrectly, because that's clearly leading with a skill set rather than really what we're doing for our clients. In my business, when I work with my clients, I coach them with the principle of becoming what I refer to as a profit and growth expert. We can go down that route. The conversations that it instills, what comes from that conversation, and so forth. As it relates to pricing, we kind of drove past that, but the point is with pricing, I do feel that we're undervalued. It's something that we need to address. And so I'm curious if you have a quick thought on that. And then lastly, this whole story narrative, you brought up correctly rapport. I think rapport is a huge thing, but I believe the story enables us to connect with one another a lot more easily than trying to go through these 20 question type things to find what we have in common with one another. So I liked how you demonstrated that. So Matthew, what would you do to try and capsulize what it is we've been talking about and you've been sharing so far? Is there maybe a few quick takeaways that we can identify?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most powerful for people is that they need to understand that what they've been doing is just trying to help their clients. And I appreciate that. But what they need to start doing is taking responsibility for their clients. And taking responsibility for their clients means selling to them in a way that they actually value what it is that you do. Because if they don't value it, they won't listen to it. And by doing that, a lot of times you have to understand that you need to build a package based on what you believe will best serve your clients, even if you think they won't pay for it. Then you need to get over that mindset hurdle. You need to create messaging that works in a sales process that works to do that. But the truth is that I've seen people that they work with clients for years. They're making no money working over 100 hours a week. And within the space of like 14 weeks, they put their prices up by like 400 to 500%, retain 82% of their clients. And their clients say, it's about time you provided this level of service, not you're putting your prices up. You have to learn to articulate the value. If you just say, sending a notification, we're putting our prices up, forget it. You need to send them an email saying, I have been letting you down and I'm sorry. And I am transitioning my business to be able to provide better guidance to my clients. Now, it's not for everyone, and I can't service everyone because I'm going to have to drop some clients in order to do this. But then you can actually have a dialogue with your clients about the value you're going to provide them, which includes conversations and advice, that is what you need to do. So what I would suggest, if you want a real clear summary, is understand that what you do has nothing to do with your functional skill and everything to do with your experience around your functional skill, helping a specific niche in order to get to a specific outcome. It then needs to have a sales process that goes back to our pre-existing clients to sell them into this higher pricing package, because a lot of people can't obtain growth from new clients because they can't take on new clients because they've got a whole load of people that don't pay them well. Once you've done that, then you're ready for new client acquisition.
I love it. Very good. Very good. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to summarize what it is we've been talking about here and come back to you for a closing thought. But before I go any further, for my listeners, I'd like to point out that Matthew's been very kind to put in the episode description 2 things that you're going to want to go take advantage of. These are essentially the first chapters to his book. So to go get the copy of Introvert's Edge and read the first chapter of that and get introduced to what we're discussing here, I invite you to go to the episode description and get that information. Or you can get the first chapter of The Introvert's Edge to Networking for free as well. So definitely go there and get those chapters so that you can actually learn more how to apply these very important principles in your process as it relates to going out there and marketing and selling your services. I would also invite you to go to the episode description for 2 books that I believe really complement well what this discussion is. The first being Your Strategic Accountant. It really outlines very clearly what it is you can do to transition yourself from being that traditional bookkeeper accountant to move more into that CFO advisory space and change the interaction, the relationship you have with your clients so you can be paid more for these services as you actually serve your clients in a way that allows them to better run their businesses and, more importantly, plan for the future. So in that context, go get a copy of the book, Your Strategic Accountant. And lastly, it's Your Profit and Growth Expert. This is where you actually move into that advisory space and have an engagement with your clients that's more in line with what Matthew's talking about here. It's where you're actually engaging with your clients in those things that matter most and enable them to actually, as your client, work on their business and apply proven principles with your help to actually make more money, keep the money they're making, and build value in their organizations. And so I definitely encourage you to get a copy of those as well. So with that said, as a summary, one of the things that I really appreciated is how Matthew's helping us change the narrative of as what we do as accounting professionals. What is the service that we're bringing to the business community? First and foremost, we need to do a better job of articulating the value of our services, how we really impact and serve our clients, and they're going to then be willing to pay us appropriately for that service. The second thing is the value of the story, the narrative that we use to actually communicate this. It's not a list of what we do as tasks. It's not the things that we're performing for them that are based on the skills we have. It's more important the story of how we're actually benefiting our clients and changing the lives of those that we work with. And I like if we use the story narrative, the process of that will be more convincing and more compelling as what we do because it'll connect at an emotional level. The other thing that I really appreciate is what Matthew is talking about here is relationship sales. It's really where we're getting to a different level with our clients and servicing them in a much, much better way. So with all that being said, Matthew, what would you like to leave as a closing thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I'll throw in one other bonus, which you can add to your show notes, but I've got a template that'll help people create their unified message and discover their niche of willing to buy clients. Now, here's the thing. I would get somebody else that's even not an accountant or bookkeeper to listen to this episode of the podcast and then do it with them because they'll get you out of their functional skill. They'll get you out of your functional skill. And every time I do this at a live event, like 97% of the room put their hands up and say, like, yes, I've now got a unified message and I've identified my niche. Which sounds great until I tell you the whole session's 90 minutes long, and most people will say this is the longest time I've spent actively working on marketing in my business. And that brings me to my final point. So many people that are listening today have institutionalized themselves into the way that this is the way that the industry works. And you're just plain wrong. What you need to do is understand that the way to succeed while everybody else is just getting by is to do things differently. But for that to be the case, you have to agree that you have to take some time to work on your business, not in it, from a sales and marketing perspective. And for you to do that, you have to believe that it is possible for you. Otherwise, you won't take the action. What's the point of practicing for a marathon if you know you're never going to finish, right?
Yeah.
So you need to know that you can, and then you need to commit to allocating time every week, every month to getting to that outcome. Because the fact of the matter is, you're about to hit a tax deadline, then you're about to hit another one, then you've got late submissions. There's a tax deadline every single quarter that is you're beyond ridiculously going to have you busy, and you are maxed out, you are at capacity, but you're not getting paid what you deserve. So if you don't start to create capacity for just this, you can't start to unwind the problem. I remember when I was a teenager, I had this massive stomach ache, and I went to the hospital and they gave me this medication just to loosen things up so it could start to heal. For your accounting business, for your bookkeeping business, it's the same thing. You need to allocate just a little bit of time to doing the work you need to start to get your prices up so you can afford to support people, or so you can start to spend the time with your clients proactively rather than dealing with the mess of reporting reactively.
Wonderfully said, Matthew. That is phenomenal, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. As an accounting profession, as we run our firms, we do need to do exactly that and ultimately take better care of our clients and better service them, but at the same time, get better pay for the services we're offering, because we are those skilled professionals. So thank you for that. So for my listeners, here's a few things that I'd like to do. First of all, if you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, definitely do so right now. Subscribe. Do the notifications. Why? Because each and every week we come out with episodes that you do not want to miss. These are experts sharing with us very valuable insights as to what it is we can be doing to work on our business. In addition to that, I also want to point out that at universalaccounting.com, there are a number of playlists, highlights that we've put together that are essentially things that you can go binge listen as you basically address those specific needs that you have in your business. So go back and listen to those previous episodes that address those specific needs that you have, ranging from marketing, selling, pricing, mental health, tech stack, staffing, and so much more. In addition to all of this, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual event. It is a conference for the owners of bookkeeping, accounting, and tax businesses. I invite you to join us. Come and join us at GrowCon to hear from the experts from the stage, meet your peers, interact with those individuals doing exactly like you are, see with whom you can collaborate and actually take care of your clients, as well as meet the staff at Universal Accounting who are committed to actually helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. So get your ticket now, and I will see you at GrowCon. Lastly, with regards to these principles and everything we've been discussing, if you'd like to apply them in your business and learn more, definitely reach out to us. You can contact us at universalaccountingschool.com or give us a phone call at 801-265-3777. And always remember this, accounting success is universal. Take care, be safe, and enjoy yourselves out there.